Hey, good evening, everyone. Good to be here again this evening on a very bright Tuesday evening in May. Looks like summer's on its way. Really good to be back here this evening to start a new subject with you all. I'm just wanting to wait for the first individual to come through, and I just want to take this. Right, let's just go back here. Brilliant. Post this. Right, I shall put that on a moment. Yeah, so I'm just going to just wait for I think my sound engineer must be on leave this week. Anyway, really good to see you. That for me, one person, good to go. I was talking to somebody yesterday who's written a book, and we were talking. She asked me certain questions, and she said, "It's not so much the numbers; it's how many people you actually kind of speak to." So one person is here. Really, really great to see you this evening, Sonia, and anyone else. Thank you. All right, she's here. Thank you, sound engineer. Also, if you are on individuals who might not be registered or on Facebook or social media, but they can get access to YouTube, I'm at Dr. Delroy 5007. That's my signature at Dr. Delroy at Dr. Delroy 5007. So really good to see everyone this evening. Those of you who continue to watch online, so big shout out to you, individuals who let me know that they do watch. Maybe not every week, but they do watch. And if you're watching later on, thank you very much indeed for taking the time to do just that. Okay, so we're going to be looking over the next couple of weeks about pausing. It's really, really important, the whole thing around pausing. And in this time when we are so busy, incredibly busy, and pressure is on, and some of you work in industries where there's targets, there's outcomes, there's results, and it's relentless. This whole thing about pausing is really, really important. Thank you, sound engineer on YouTube. Really appreciate it. Jenny, yeah, really good to see you this evening. Yeah, good. So we're looking at pausing. And the reason why, obviously, we finished the session the last series, and it's a friend of mine who I did let her know that I won't be mentioning her name. She's not on any social media anyway, but even so, I want to respect her privacy. But she has been suffering with she's in a very high pressurized job. It's starting to affect her health. And then she was given a notice from her landlord maybe quite a few months ago, and a real hassle trying to find a place. She's found a place with a friend outside of where she really wanted to be, rent's incredibly high, and she'd not even unpacked the boxes, and then the next thing, her father was critically ill, so she's having to travel from south to north, repeatedly spend time in the north and so forth. And she sent me a message recently to say that she's really had to take a step back. She said, I've had to pause because my health has really been affected, and I now need to look at my diet, an anti-inflammatory diet. So she's having to look at her food and so forth. And I just thought about this whole thing about pausing, because it's so important. So that's the backdrop to this story, and I'm having to work with it so often. People incredibly busy, burnout, this whole thing about pausing. So I just want to share with you, I want to share with you the poem that I read, or the phrase, practice the pause. Pause before judging. Pause before assuming. Pause before accusing. Pause whenever you're about to react harshly, and you'll avoid doing and saying things you'll later regret. Laurie Dashen. Absolutely brilliant. Somebody shared it with me. I can't even remember where it was now, but somebody shared it with me. And I just thought it'd be really good to just kind of look at that, and we'll look at it from week to week, but just practice the pause. Really important. So to pause means to linger for a moment, a temporary stop. And just to go back to that little quote there, oh gosh, I know my own time in my own life and some of the work I've done, taking a pause has saved me from loads of trouble. I tell you, I was ready to kind of jump in with both feet, and somebody just said, Delroy, just hear another side to this, just find out a bit more information. And I'm so glad I did. I was able to give a better response and so forth. So this whole thing about pausing, incredibly important, certainly if you're in management or leadership position. And if you know managers, or I'm questioning the whole thing about leaders, if you know managers that are kind of shoot from the hip, send them this. Get the YouTube, send it to them, and ask them to use it as part of their their CPD, continual professional development. This pause, and it's really important, can save so much in relationships, marriage, with your kids, at work, all manner of things. Just to pause, to take some time, really important. So to pause is to linger for a moment, to a temporary stop. The synonym is to let up, hold the horses, take a breath, that type of thing. Really important for us as human beings. Right, to pause in life, a temporary stop in action. It's about listening to ourselves and finding out what restores us, gives us life, to our soul, what refreshes us. And it's this thing, sometimes we can get to this kind of hamster wheel. It's just kind of going. But we need to pause regularly to find out what refreshes us, what speaks to us, what soothes us. It's really important especially if we're in a job which is really highly pressurized. One of the worst ways we can do is to go out at the weekend. Certainly if you're of a younger element, a really difficult job is to go out and to binge drink or to do loads of drugs. It's not doing you any good whatsoever. There's a friend of mine passed away age 54 with Alzheimer's, and I went to see him and he didn't recognize me at all. And I remember the friend who, when I went to see him, we then went for some food, and he said, me and I shan't mention his name, me and so for many years, he said, for about 10 years, he said, we'd go out on a Friday night, which we would return to work Monday, and we couldn't remember what we've done. We traveled all over the place. We did loads of drink, loads of drugs. And he said for most weekends, we couldn't remember what we had done. And for him, he had a long pause. He took up faith, and he said he realized that being involved in faith really took him out of that scene. And he really recognized it was his form of kind of rehab. This whole thing about let's find healthy ways to refresh ourselves. I think it was in the first lockdown. My friend was telling me his friend was drinking to steady his nerves, and it was his wife who said to him, "Do you realise that's the second bottle of whiskey you're starting this week?" So this whole thing about pausing, find out what refreshes us. The thing with, I'm just mentioning, I've got nothing against drink, but the problem with drink and other things that we use, they have short-term relief, but then they can become addictions, and then you've got other problems to deal with. So pause to find healthy ways to recover, to restore, whatever it might be. And let me just give you an example. A friend of mine years ago had a really high pressurized job in a mental health charity, and she wanted something that would really help her to relax, and she took up astronomy. No, not astrology, astronomy. And she absolutely loved it. It took her away from the pressures of the work. And for her, it was a pause from the pressures of people and to begin to look out into the universe. And she absolutely loved it. So to pause in life, really important to find out what refreshes us, what gives us energy, what energizes us, what motivates us, what restores our spirit, whatever word you want to use, but what restores us. We need to take the time to pause to find out what things are. Pausing is good, as you can hear already. It's good for our mental and physical well-being. Pausing is helpful in speaking and in communication. So what I mean by that is sometimes we might be in a kind of tense situation, and it's really helpful if we choose the words that we're going to say to people, because it can really, we know already, most of us perhaps listen on this, There have been times whereby you've listened to you've said things to individuals and it's come out absolutely wrong. The tone has been wrong and it's caused quite a lot of problems. I had a manager who was really, really good at that. She chose her words really, really well. She slowed her speech down. She was very thoughtful in what she said. And even in tense moments, she did exactly the same. She paused, she thought what she was doing. And she's somebody who told me that her family knows not to cross her. She said, Delroy, my family don't like me if they cross me. So that kind of let me know, don't cross her. But in terms of a conversation, in communication, it's really good to slow down and think about what you're going to say, how you're going to say it. And don't allow people to rush you for an answer, but have be thoughtful how you respond into a situation. Somebody says, as you pause, it helps you to feel comfortable with the words you're going to use. And you can even do that in tense situations when you have to deliver bad news to somebody or something very, very difficult. By pausing, slowing down, feel comfortable with the words, choose your words carefully, give it some thought. Really important in how we work and interact with individuals. Pausing helps us to remain stable. Oh, good evening. Yeah, Catherine, yeah, good evening to you. Glad you found me on YouTube. Thank you very much indeed. Yep, so pause. We're talking about pausing this evening. Not as in pause as in terms of animal pause, but P-A-U-S-I-N-G, pausing, lingering, waiting, taking a breath, holding your horses, stand a moment. That's what we're talking about. Okay, so pausing helps to remain stable in difficult and tense times. As we know, there can be a lot of pressure for somebody to push you to make a decision, push you to make an answer, but no, take your time. And also say to individuals, if they're pushing you, say, could you give me a minute? I remember a couple, I think there was a kind of tense moment, and the husband said very, very wisely to his wife, just hold a minute. He wanted to respond, but he just said, just hold a minute. And the kind of conflict was actually minimized, and he was able to say what he needed to say. So pausing helps us to remain stable in difficult tense times. And the thing is, when we pause, we are better with ourselves, we are better with other people. And what the pausing does, it helps us to become aware of what's taking place. And what it does, as it helps us to become aware, we become more productive, and also we become happier. We simply notice a lot more when we pause. A very good example for that, maybe not a good one, but an example, if you drive somewhere all the time, and I remember it happened to me some time ago. I was always driving to work. This was quite a few years ago. But then as the weather got better, I decided to walk. And the amount of things I noticed that I hadn't noticed when I was driving. And that's the same thing with pausing. It's slow things down. You have more control of things. It's stable. It keeps you kind of grounded, but also you notice more. Really, really important. So we're going to look a little bit now at the psychology. Next week, I'm going to look at the neuroscience of pausing. So it's really good to find out what's happening in these worlds around pausing, the neuroscience. I'll say a little bit about that in a moment, but the psychology of pausing. So we're going to get, so I should have said earlier on, if you're taking notes, in fact, it would be good if you had a bit of pen and paper to take some notes. Some of the stuff is kind of new to me, and I'm just kind of sharing it with individuals. Some of it is not. I kind of know a little bit about this. Certainly, in my work as a counsellor over the years, I've had to say to folks, look, you need to slow down a bit. You can't continue the way you're going, because if you do, this is going to happen. As I've not said this for a little while, but sometimes we don't have to wait to go and see a counsellor in a crisis. But actually, if we recognize, if we continue this way, we go and see somebody, you avert the crisis, you pause, you take some time out to take stock of where your life is and begin to make some changes before you have to make them. So this whole thing about pausing, it's about taking stock of what's happening at the moment, and also pausing, taking stock of our lives, really important. And again, I encourage participation. If you want to ask a question, or you've got a thought or a comment, please stick it in the chat box and I'll share it with whom I will. Okay, so pausing activates, this is called in the brain the parasympathetic nervous system. Okay, the parasympathetic nervous system. And what that does, it's responsible, it's part of the autonomic nervous system, and it's responsible for the functions that we don't have to think about. So if you think about certain things in our body we don't have to think about consciously, but part of our brain, our system, is actually doing the work for us. So things like our heart rate, digestion, our blood pressure, going to the loo, sweating. We don't have to think about those things, but there's this parasympathetic nervous system is controlling all that for us. So when we pause, it really helps to regulate all that. So our that controls that bit. Our sympathetic nervous system controls the body's fight or flight. So the PSN, the parasympathetic nervous system, it controls the things we don't think about, as I said before, and the sympathetic nervous system controls fight or flight. So when the PSN, the parasympathetic nervous system, is activated, heart rate slows down, breathing, lowers blood pressure, and promotes digestion. So these things are going on when we pause. So we just think, well, Delroy, I'm just taking some time out. No, there are benefits to our body. The brain benefits, the body benefits as we pause and slow down. But sometimes what we do, because we can't see it, it's not part of our thinking. But one of the things that I'm certainly know now, that we see a lot of things, but sometimes we need to ask the question, what's going on that's not seen, which possibly is more important than what is seen? So that's just something to kind of bear in mind. So the parasympathetic nervous system, it controls the things that we don't think about, and you've got the sympathetic nervous system, it's there for fight or flight. And you can imagine if we lower things down, slow things down, we pause, it's really beneficial for our bodies. Now, a little bit more about this whole thing around pausing. Kate Livingston, in an article called Taking a Pause, I certainly can give you the link if you need it. She saw this book called Do Pause. You Are Not a To-Do List. The guy who's written the book is called Robert Poynting. He's an associate fellow at Oxford University. You can find some of his stuff on YouTube. Really interesting guy. She said, when she picked up the book, Do Pause, you are not a to-do list. She read this quote and she said it really got to her. And I think it's really important for all of us. Whatever you are doing, if you want something else, whatever you are doing, if you want something else to happen, you need to pause. So if we're stuck in something, we're really kind of nose to the grindstone and we're stuck at something, but we want a different outcome, what Robert Poynting is suggesting, you need to pause. And sometimes you'll hear of writers who writing something and they become stuck and they walk away from what they're doing. They go for a walk, and in that walk they get an idea which it is just necessary and right for what they're working on. And sometimes and perhaps those of you who've written essays and so forth and your mind's been occupied, you're away from it and you're relaxing and you're chilling, and actually there's an idea that comes for the book, the next stage, without you even thinking about it consciously. So this whole thing about pausing, it is incredibly important. So whatever you're doing, if you want something else to happen, you need to pause. And maybe next week and the week after, we'll look at what it means to pause, how we go about it, and how we kind of record things and so forth. Really, really important, and certainly important in this time when we're living at a frenetic pace. It's really important that we have this thing about pausing. Incredibly important. Wow, here we go. Woo! Now then, let me just see. Pausing is like a mental spell check. Absolutely. It helps you consider how your method and tone of communication can be misunderstood. Example. For example, if you misspell public, it can really lower the tone if the L is missed. Indeed, pubic. Oh my gosh. And likewise, if you're talking too fast or too much, you may appear to be not interested in anyone else's contribution when they're just trying to finish what you're saying within a time slot. Absolutely. Yeah, that's really true. And how many of us have sent messages texting and maybe we didn't check it properly? And in fact, it happened today. Somebody sent me a message yesterday about their father's funeral, and I wrote back, yes, I did spot the typo. Let me just go back. Oh, hang on. Did I spot the typo? Yes, I did. Yes, I did. I certainly, the L I did. If there's another one, show it to me. Not unless it's misspelled. Yeah. If I've missed it, bring it on. Highlight it to me. And now I've forgotten my train of thought now. Yes, somebody sent me WhatsApp when the files. I said, oh yes, oh hang on, yes, I've seen the spelling. But anyway, if I missed it, Jenny, please let me know. So she sent me this fly. I said I should be there. Yeah, that's right. I see that. You see that? I should be there. I sent it off, and 2 or 3 hours later, I looked again, and it said shout. I shall be there. Now, spelling error, but actually, I'd taken a bit of time just to reread it. It wouldn't have said that. So that's the kind of little simple thing. Yeah, I did see the spelling error. Yeah, but I weren't going to call it out. So there you go. Yeah. So this whole thing about taking time to pause. When we pause, it's time to ask important questions. It's also time to reset. It's time to reconnect with yourself. Sometimes when people go on holiday, and sometimes we don't take that type of break enough. And then I think they said that on a 2-week holiday, you only start to unwind proper in the second week. I suspect that was pre-COVID. I suspect now it's taking people a lot longer to unwind because quite often people are so tense when they go away on holidays. So this whole thing about taking regular breaks, pausing, is really important. Pausing breaks the hamster wheel. And that's just something that I put. It breaks the hamster wheel mentality. Got to keep going, got to keep going, got to keep going, got to keep going. Absolutely not. Robert Poynton, as I quoted earlier on, he said this, a pause is an opening. Now, Robert Poynton, his work, he's an associate fellow at Oxford University, and he's also a founder of a organization in the States. So this whole thing about pausing. He said a pause is an opening. It acts as a portal to other options and choices. So basically, going back to pausing, a time to ask important questions, a time to reset, a time to reconnect with yourselves. That taking that time and stepping back, catching a breath, holding the horses, putting the brake on, whatever metaphor we want to use, it's really important. It's a portal. It gives us the opportunity to explore what are the other options here. I'm thinking I can only do this, but what are the other options that I might be missing? What are the other choices I can make, but I'm missing because I'm just too busy? That's why I love journaling, taking that time back to step back to find out what's going on. What am I missing in the madness and the craziness of what's going on? In fact, what can happen if you get so caught up with the business of things and then you start to step back and you start asking serious questions of your life and you want to follow through on them, you might have to make some serious decisions. Because one of the things, of course, is that once you know the truth, you can't unknow it. So the truth is staring you in the face. You've stopped, you've asked questions, you've answered the questions honestly, painfully, and you know what the truth is. You can't now unlearn it or unknow the truth. Then the challenge is then how then do you act on it? And the things, if you don't act on it today, there comes a point where you need to act on it. If you don't act on it, you will live to regret it. So this whole thing is really important. Oh, good evening, Dawn. Really good to see you this evening, and anyone else who may have come in a little bit later. But yeah, really good. We're talking about pausing today, taking the time. In fact, indeed, what I've got here. Right, it's interesting how scammers and con artists work. They try to rush their victims into making fast decisions before they can use reason and good spell check and good judgment. Yes, yeah, that's what they do. They they do that quite often. I get a lot of messenger, and I see it's usually from somebody I know, and there's a way that I know that it's a scammer straight away, and then what I think they said don't answer them, but what I do ... Oh no, another scammer, and then I got the icon looking like that, and I don't get anything further from that. I spot them a mile off, hearing about this and heard about this and all that type of nonsense. Yep. So yeah, scammer. Yeah, they want to rush you to make a quick decision, and if people are rushing you, that's a cue for you to say, hold on, I need to think about this. So a pause is an opening. It acts as a portal to other options and choices. Taking pauses in whatever ways we can will help us find the best way forward. Dawners, yeah. Journal can be cathartic. Password protect your journal if necessary. Yeah, that's if you do them electronically. I'm still old school. I still write. There's something about pen, paper, touch, feel, sensory, and so forth. But yeah, and obviously with an electronic journal, you can include links and photos and videos and so forth. Whereas the paper one, it's usually, well, we can add things, of course, but you don't have to just write. I tend to write, but people who are arty, they do images and pictures that you can stick things in and so forth. But yeah, journaling can be incredibly important. And actually, I'll just say this: when I do counselling, when I do note taking afterwards, it's amazing the process of doing the notes, slowing down, pausing. Things I missed in the session, but I see as I'm writing, as I'm slowing down, taking the notes, and not putting my inflections on what's happened. I'm just writing down as best as I can from memory what took place in the session, the order of things. And in fact, the best therapists, anyway, I don't know whether it's changed, but they say the best therapists only remember about 30% of the session anyway. But the process of writing down notes, you begin to see things that you missed in the session at that particular time. This whole thing about pausing is absolutely incredible. So we're going to end there. So taking pauses in whatever ways we can will help us find the best way forward. This person called Robert Poynting had written a book called Do Pause, and then he's written another book called Do Improvise. So basically, less push, more pause, better results. And I think what's happened now, we're caught up in this fallacy that we've got to be busy. But actually, and then sometimes somebody emails you and they want an immediate response, and actually they might have had a better response had you emailed the following day if you're having to give something some thought. So this whole thing about pausing is really important, not just in terms of taking the time back, thinking, but actually how our body benefits from it. Really important. More so, I think, in this time where there's so much technology about, and we're kind of on call 24/7. We go on holidays, our phones are with us. It's amazing. The last time we went on holiday, you see people at the beach on the laptop. Listen, it's pausing. Just put all that stuff away for a while if you're on holiday. And it could be they're looking at something. It could be they're looking at something educational. They could be looking at something like a video, something. But I just think we just need to take a rest from a lot of the things that's occupying our time and using a lot of our energy. So that is, we're looking at pausing. What pausing is, it's taking just stopping for a moment, to linger, to hold your horses, put the brake on, just to pause for a while, hold your breath, step back a bit, let's see what's going on. It helps us to remain stable. It has major benefits for our bodies and so forth. And also, if you're in a managerial situation or a leadership situation, Pausing helps us to see other options and better choices that we will not see if we're in a rush. Okay, listen, have a fantastic evening. If there's no other comments, really good to see some of you, and those of you who might be listening later on in this week, or later on in a few weeks' time, or later on in months' time. Thank you for taking the time just to listen to this whole thing around pausing. It's very, very simple, but incredibly, incredibly important for our well-being, for our development, and so forth. So go well, take care, enjoy the rest of the evening and your week. And I'll see you again next Tuesday for part 2 of pausing, taking a pause. All right, take care. Blessings always. Take care now. Bye-bye.